The cliffs of Turkey hold secrets carved in stone, secrets so strange that for centuries they left archaeologists, travelers, and entire communities baffled. Rising high above the valleys and rivers, the rock faces are lined with tombs that seem almost impossible to reach. Carved directly into vertical stone walls, hundreds of feet off the ground, these cliff tombs once belonged to the Lycian civilization, a people who flourished more than 2,000 years ago. From a distance, the tombs look like windows into another world, doorways leading into the heart of the mountain. But the question that haunted generations of scholars was simple: how did they build them? How could anyone carve out chambers so high in sheer cliffs with no modern equipment, no scaffolding, and no cranes? The mystery endured, adding to the aura of legend that surrounded the Lycian culture, a civilization that prized death almost as much as life. For locals, the cliff tombs became more than ruins. They became myths. Stories passed down for generations claimed that the tombs were built by gods, giants, or beings with powers far beyond human reach. The sheer scale of the structures fed these myths. Some tombs were decorated with intricate carvings resembling the facades of grand houses and temples, their entrances shaped like doorways for the dead to walk through into the afterlife. Many believed these were not simply burial sites but portals to another realm. The Lycians, who lived in what is now southern Turkey, had a culture obsessed with death rituals, believing that the higher one was buried, the closer their soul would be to the heavens. But even with that belief, the construction itself made no sense. Without ladders that could stretch so far, without the ability to cling to the cliffs safely, how could ordinary people create such monuments? When Western explorers first encountered the tombs in the 19th century, they were astonished. The vertical placement made excavation and study nearly impossible, so the tombs remained untouched mysteries, adding fuel to speculation. Some early theories suggested that scaffolding must have been built from wood, allowing workers to climb and carve. But critics argued that wooden scaffolding hundreds of feet tall would have been unstable, expensive, and nearly impossible to construct in the rugged terrain. Others thought ropes might have been used, with workers lowering themselves from above. But such methods would have been both dangerous and impractical for creating the precision that the tombs display. The debate continued for decades, each new suggestion raising as many doubts as it solved. The mystery only deepened when archaeologists discovered that many of the tombs were not simple chambers, but elaborately decorated, complete with pillars, lintels, and inscriptions. These were not the hurried burials of a desperate culture, but the carefully designed final resting places of kings, nobles, and warriors. They spoke of wealth, power, and artistry, but they also spoke of a society that went to impossible lengths to honor its dead. Some tombs were found to contain treasures and offerings, suggesting that they had been sealed intentionally to prevent looting. And yet, many were looted centuries later, raising the question: if humans could not reach them to build them, how could others reach them to plunder them? Recent studies, however, have begun to unravel the truth behind the mystery. Archaeologists and engineers collaborated to examine the rock faces closely, using drones, 3D scanning, and advanced modeling. Their findings revealed something astonishing. These tombs were not carved from precarious perches high in the cliffs. Instead, the Lycians carved them from above, working downward. The ancient builders began their work at the top of the cliff, cutting ledges and footholds as they descended. This technique allowed them to carve chambers, facades, and entrances with remarkable precision, all while creating the illusion that the tombs floated high in the air. The answer was not supernatural, but it was ingenious. What had seemed impossible was, in fact, a testament to careful planning, sheer courage, and incredible skill. Yet even with this solution, the mystery retains its aura. The Lycians risked their lives to carve these tombs, dedicating enormous amounts of labor to an effort that could never benefit them in life. Why? Scholars believe the answer lies in their belief system. For the Lycians, death was not an end but a passage, and being buried high above the earth was a way to ensure the soul's safe journey to the afterlife. In this sense, the tombs were not just monuments but promises, structures built to bridge the mortal world with the divine. The cliffs, inaccessible to ordinary people, became eternal sanctuaries for the elite, safe from the chaos of the living world below. What remains today is both haunting and beautiful. The cliff tombs of Turkey stand as reminders of a civilization lost to time, yet still speaking through stone. The mystery of how they were built has been answered, but the deeper question, why humans go to such extremes to honor the dead, remains as powerful as ever. The Lycians carved their devotion into the very bones of the earth, and their work still watches over the valleys, whispering stories of faith, ambition, and the lengths people will go to chase eternity. The Lycian cliff tombs are more than feats of engineering. They are echoes of a lost world where death was not feared but embraced as part of a grand passage. To understand why the Lycians risked their lives to carve chambers into sheer cliffs, one must step inside their beliefs and customs. The Lycians, who thrived along the rugged Mediterranean coast of what is now southern Turkey, viewed the afterlife not as an abstract concept but as a continuation of life itself. To them, the soul needed a proper home beyond death, just as the living needed shelter in life. That belief explains why so many of their tombs resemble elaborate houses or temples. They were not merely graves. They were eternal dwellings designed for spirits to live in forever. Walking beneath these towering cliffs, one can see how much detail the Lycians poured into their work. Some tombs are carved to mimic wooden homes, complete with beams and doorframes etched into stone. Others resemble grand temple facades, with pillars and pediments that would not look out of place in Greek architecture. Archaeologists believe this was intentional. By designing tombs as houses of the dead, the Lycians ensured that their loved ones would not enter the afterlife homeless. The resemblance to temples may also signify reverence, placing the dead closer to the gods. In Lycian culture, ancestors were not just remembered, but honored as powerful presences who continued to shape the lives of the living. Legends grew around these tombs, shaping how later generations understood them. Locals told stories of spirits flying out of the openings at night, of glowing lights seen flickering near the cliffs, and of curses that befell anyone who tried to disturb them. Some tales claimed that the tombs were guarded by mythical beings, winged messengers who carried the souls of the dead up to the heavens. These stories fit with the very placement of the tombs high above the ground, where only birds could easily reach. The Lycians may have believed that the soul, freed from the body, would ascend more quickly to the divine if it began its journey from the cliffs. The tombs, therefore, acted as launch points for eternity. The location of the tombs also reflected the social structure of Lycian society. Not everyone was buried in these cliffside monuments. They were reserved for the elite, for kings, nobles, and warriors whose status demanded an eternal resting place that could not be confused with the common graveyards of ordinary people. To be interred in a cliff tomb was a sign of power and prestige. The tombs themselves became symbols of wealth and influence, visible to entire communities from the valleys below. In this sense, they were not only monuments to the dead, but also statements to the living, reminders of who held power in life and who carried it into death. What fascinates archaeologists and historians is how these beliefs tie into the broader spiritual landscape of the ancient Mediterranean. The Lycians interacted with neighboring cultures such as the Greeks and Persians, borrowing and blending traditions. Their tombs show clear influences of Greek architecture, but their placement high in cliffs reflects something more uniquely Lycian, a cultural obsession with height and separation, perhaps rooted in their rugged, mountainous homeland. The cliffs themselves became sacred, By carving their dead into the living rock, the Lycians bound their memory to the land forever. Even today, standing beneath the tombs can stir unease. The structures seem suspended between worlds, too high for mortals, too solid for spirits. The legends persist in whispers, that the cliffs hum with voices at night, that the carvings shift when no one is watching, and that the dead still linger in their stone houses. While modern science explains the construction techniques, it cannot erase the aura of mystery. These tombs feel alive, as though they are still fulfilling their original purpose, housing the spirits of the departed, guarding them, and reminding the living of the thin line between earth and eternity. In the end, the Lycian tombs are not just relics of an ancient people, but mirrors reflecting humanity's timeless desire to defy death. The Lycians carved their faith into mountains, declaring to the heavens that their souls would not be lost. Their monuments endure not because of stone alone, but because of the belief that animated them that death is not an end, but a doorway. When European explorers first laid eyes on the Lycian cliff tombs in the 18th and 19th centuries, they were struck by awe and confusion. The tombs appeared like windows carved into sheer mountainsides, staring down at the valleys below. With no visible pathways or platforms, the question burned in their minds: how could human hands, thousands of years ago, create something so intricate in such impossible locations? The mystery was so profound that myths quickly filled the void of explanation. Travelers wrote in their journals that these tombs must have been built by giants, supernatural beings capable of scaling cliffs with ease. Others speculated that they were the work of gods themselves, carved by divine hands to honor the souls of Lycian kings. Stories spread that winged creatures had helped transport materials and workers, lifting them into impossible heights. For locals, who lived under the silent watch of these tombs, the legends were even stranger. Some villagers whispered that the tombs glowed faintly at night, illuminated from within by the spirits of the dead. Others claimed to hear voices carried by the wind along the cliffs, the ancestors calling out to remind the living of their presence. Over time, the mystery of the tombs became inseparable from myth and folklore, turning them into sacred, untouchable monuments. Archaeologists of the early modern era were no less baffled. Some argued that ancient scaffolding must have been built, stretching hundreds of feet into the air. But this theory faced serious criticism. How could wooden scaffolds remain stable on such uneven, rocky ground? Others suggested ropes and pulleys lowered workers from above, but this seemed impractical for the precision of the carvings. Every hypothesis seemed to collapse under the sheer scale and detail of the tombs. The mystery endured, fueling both academic debates and wild theories. By the 20th century, interest in the Lycian tombs had intensified. Scholars began comparing the architecture with Greek and Persian influences, noting the similarities in design. The facades, with their columns and triangular pediments, seemed inspired by Greek temples, while the placement of tombs in cliffs had no real precedent in other Mediterranean cultures. The Lycians appeared to be blending outside influences with their own unique obsession with height and separation from the ordinary world. Still, the practical question, how did they build them, remained unanswered. The breakthrough came when archaeologists began studying the cliffs themselves rather than the tombs alone. With closer inspection, researchers noticed faint ledges, tool marks, and footholds carved directly into the rock above the tombs. These details revealed the secret of Lycian ingenuity. The tombs had not been carved from impossible perches on vertical walls. Instead, the builders had started from the top of the cliff and worked downward. By cutting ledges as they descended, they created temporary platforms to support themselves while chiseling out chambers and facades. What seemed like supernatural skill was in fact a practical, if perilous, technique. It explained the tombs' remarkable precision, the clean lines of their facades, and the fact that so many remained intact after thousands of years. Modern technology has confirmed this theory. Drones, 3D scans, and digital reconstructions have shown how the Lycians systematically carved the tombs from top to bottom. In some cases, they even used natural cracks in the rock to anchor themselves. It was dangerous work, requiring immense courage and skill, but it was not impossible. This revelation solved the central mystery, yet it also deepened the admiration for Lycian craftsmanship. These were not mythical giants or divine builders, but ordinary humans who risked their lives to create eternal monuments for their dead. Yet, even with the mystery of construction solved, the aura surrounding the tombs has not faded. Visitors still stand in silence before the cliffs, overwhelmed by their scale and beauty. The myths of giants and gods may no longer be believed, but they linger as echoes of how humans once tried to understand the impossible. The true genius of the Lycians was not only in their engineering, but in their ability to inspire wonder that endures millennia after their civilization vanished. When archaeologists finally managed to enter some of the Lycian tombs, the discoveries inside reshaped the understanding of an entire civilization. For centuries, the tombs had been sealed, silent chambers perched high in the cliffs, untouched by most human hands. Yet time and looters had already taken their toll. Many tombs were found empty, stripped of treasures and bones long ago. Still, even in their emptiness, they spoke volumes about the Lycian people. The first thing archaeologists noticed was the sheer size of some chambers. These were not cramped resting places but expansive rooms, carved deep into the rock with care and precision. The walls bore the marks of chisels, evidence of painstaking labor. Some chambers were designed to hold multiple sarcophagi, suggesting that entire families, or even dynasties, were entombed together. Others were solitary, more elaborate, clearly reserved for rulers or nobles. The craftsmanship reflected the social hierarchy of Lycian society. The higher one's status in life, the more elaborate the tomb in death. Artifacts uncovered in the better preserved tombs shed light on Lycian burial practices. Archaeologists found fragments of pottery, jewelry, coins, and weapons, items believed to accompany the dead into the afterlife. These offerings showed that the Lycians shared a belief common to many ancient cultures. That death was not the end, but a journey requiring preparation. The presence of coins was particularly fascinating. Some scholars linked this to Greek traditions, where coins were placed with the dead as payment to cross into the afterlife. This hinted at cultural exchange and influence between the Lycians and their Greek neighbors, blending foreign customs with their own. Even more striking were the inscriptions carved into some tomb facades, written in the Lycian language, a script deciphered only in modern times. These inscriptions often included the names of the deceased and curses against intruders. One translation warned that anyone who disturbed the tomb would suffer the wrath of the gods. These curses suggest that the Lycians, like many ancient peoples, feared desecration and believed the dead retained power to punish the living. The fact that so many tombs were looted despite these warnings adds a haunting irony, as if the curses failed to protect what they were meant to guard. Looting, unfortunately, became a recurring theme in the story of the Lycian tombs. Over centuries, treasure hunters pried open facades, stripped sarcophagi of valuables, and left the chambers desecrated. By the time modern archaeologists arrived, much of the material evidence of Lycian life had been lost forever. What remained were fragments, broken pottery, scattered bones, and the stone architecture itself. Yet even in ruin, the tombs retained their dignity. The emptiness of many chambers only reinforced the sense of mystery, as though the dead had long since moved on, leaving their houses behind. Despite the losses, the tombs still revealed much about Lycian culture. Their design mirrored Lycian houses, complete with wooden beam imitations carved in stone. This indicated a belief that the afterlife was a continuation of earthly existence. The dead would need homes as much as the living did. The positioning of tombs high on cliffs further emphasized the separation of the elite from ordinary people, both in life and in death. To live high was to rule, to rest high was to remain honored forever. Some tombs contained sarcophagi with intricate carvings, including scenes of battles, animals, and mythological figures. These images told stories of the deceased, celebrating their victories and virtues. Through them, archaeologists glimpsed Lycian values, bravery, leadership, connection to the divine. Unlike anonymous graves, these tombs were monuments to identity, preserving not just the body but the memory of who the person was. Over time, however, the cliffs and tombs became victims of natural decay. Erosion wore away details, earthquakes damaged facades, and vegetation crept into cracks. Yet, remarkably, many tombs remain intact after more than 2 millennia, a testament to the durability of Lycian craftsmanship. Even today, standing at the base of these cliffs, one can see the windows of the dead staring out across valleys and rivers, their silence heavy with history. What archaeologists uncovered was not just a burial practice but a philosophy. The Lycians viewed death as both a transition and a declaration. The tombs declared status, power, and faith, while also providing a vessel for the journey beyond. In a sense, the Lycians wrote their story in stone, stories of kings, warriors, families, and beliefs that still endure. The mystery of how they built the tombs may be solved, but the meaning inside them remains layered and complex. Each chamber, looted or preserved, whispers of a people who lived fiercely, honored their dead, and sought to defy time itself. The cliffs of Turkey are not just monuments to the past. They are echoes of lives that believed eternity could be carved into the rock. Today, the Lycian cliff tombs stand not only as archaeological treasures, but also as cultural symbols that bind modern Turkey to its ancient past. Rising above towns like Fathiai, Dalian, and Myra, these rock-cut monuments draw thousands of visitors every year, their silent faces gazing down across bustling streets, rivers, and fields. The people who now live under their shadow no longer fear them as cursed places, but embrace them as part of Turkey's identity, reminders of a civilization that once thrived where modern life now unfolds. Tourists who travel along the turquoise coast often find themselves suddenly face to face with the tombs, their facades carved into cliffs that seem almost to defy gravity. From boats along the Dalian River, the tombs of Konos appear like guardians etched into the mountainside. In Fathiai, the tomb of Amintas, with its grand temple-like design, looms majestically above the city, an eternal reminder that the Lycians valued beauty and permanence even in death. These tombs, carefully preserved, are now heritage sites protected by the Turkish government, recognized as vital links to the region's deep history. Yet their significance extends beyond tourism. The tombs embody questions that continue to fascinate scholars, artists, and locals alike. They are not merely ruins to be photographed, but puzzles to be contemplated. Why did the Lycians go to such extraordinary lengths to honor their dead? Why carve homes for the dead into dangerous cliffs rather than build safer monuments on the ground? These questions are discussed not only in academic papers, but in the stories guides tell, the legends retold to visitors, and the imaginations of those who climb the hills to stand beneath the tombs. The aura of mystery still clings to them, even after the practical engineering secrets have been revealed. Their endurance is part of the reason they inspire so much wonder. Earthquakes, erosion, and looting have scarred the tombs, yet many still stand with their facades remarkably intact. Their survival over more than 2 millennia speaks to the skill of Lycian craftsmen and to the cultural determination of a people who sought eternity in stone. For Turkey, they are reminders of resilience, of civilizations that rose, flourished, and fell, but left behind a legacy that no conquest or disaster could erase. The Lycian tombs also remind us that heritage is fragile. Looters and careless visitors in centuries past robbed many tombs of their treasures, erasing pieces of history forever. Modern Turkey has responded with efforts to protect these sites, building walkways, fencing off the most vulnerable areas, and enforcing conservation measures. But the greatest preservation lies in memory and respect. By teaching new generations about the tombs, by telling the stories of the Lycians, Turkey ensures that these monuments will continue to inspire rather than fade into obscurity. On a deeper level, the tombs touch something universal in humanity. Every culture grapples with death, with how to honor the dead, and how to make sense of the afterlife. The Lycians chose to meet this challenge by carving their devotion into cliffs, leaving behind monuments that defy both time and gravity. Standing before them today, one feels the same awe and unease that ancient travelers must have felt. The tombs are beautiful, but they are also haunting. Silent reminders that human beings will always go to extraordinary lengths to find meaning in mortality. For modern Turkey, they are both heritage and mystery. They draw scholars who piece together fragments of Lycian culture, artists who paint or photograph their haunting beauty, and travelers who climb paths to stand in the shadow of stone doorways carved for souls. And though the mystery of how they were built has been solved, the greater mystery, why we humans across all ages feel compelled to reach beyond death and carve our hopes into the earth, remains. The Lycian cliff tombs are Turkey's eternal storytellers. They speak of courage, devotion, artistry, and belief. They stand as testaments to a people who believed that eternity could be reached by stone steps carved into the sky. And they remind us that mysteries are not always meant to be completely solved. Sometimes they are meant to endure, to inspire, and to keep the living connected to the whispers of the dead. High on the cliffs of southern Turkey, the Lycian tombs remain as silent watchers of time. For centuries they puzzled explorers and inspired myths of giants, gods, and spirits that carried the dead to the heavens. Today, we know how they were carved, by brave craftsmen working downward from the cliff tops, cutting ledges and footholds as they risked their lives to honor their dead. The engineering mystery is solved, yet the deeper questions linger, questions that no amount of study can fully answer. Why did the Lycians believe the dead must rest so high above the earth? Why did they carve homes and temples into stone, replicas of life for those who had already left it? Perhaps that is the true power of the tombs. They are not only monuments to the past but mirrors reflecting our own search for meaning. Every culture builds for the dead. Pyramids, mausoleums,